Imagine you're David facing Goliath. No head guard, no uniform. Thin sandals, and you can feel the stone and the rocky ground underneath your feet. In your left hand, you've got 3 stones. In your right hand, you've got a slingshot. And you look up at this 8-foot, 9-foot, 10-foot, 12-foot, 100-foot monster thinking, oh my God. Imagine the anxiety and the fear that you feel in that particular moment. And imagine dropping 2 of the stones on the ground, taking one of those stones, put it in the slingshot and start swinging. And imagine all your hope and all your dreams in that slingshot as you're swinging, as you let it go. Imagine following that stone and watching it as it aims towards the temple of that giant. And it connects. Imagine that euphoria at that moment when that stone hits that temple. Raise your hand if you've ever had to face a Goliath of some proportion in your own life, some challenge, some circumstance, and you got through. One of the biggest Goliaths I faced in my life was at the age of 14, coming to 15. When coming from an inner city where you were destined not to achieve because of the colour of your skin or because of your accent or because of the things you did or didn't have, I felt that I was worthless. I got sucked into the hype of my conditioning and I decided I no longer wanted to be here. And I was living with my mum at the time and she would work 3 jobs, inner city story for many people. And on the evenings when she had that piece of work to do, I used to go and be looked after by the lady upstairs, a lady called Anne. So it was an old Scottish woman called Anne. Loved the little wee dram of whiskey, as she liked to kind of keep describing. But those times with Anne were amazing because she used to talk about the war and growing up in rural Scotland and all those things that I didn't know about, the history, her history. But on one winter evening, Anne wasn't there and my mum had to go to work. And it was one of them nights where it got so bad that it was the time when I no longer was going to be here. And I walked out the flat door onto the balcony, climbed onto the balcony and perched myself off the top of the balcony. And straight down, there was a street light and there was a path that went underneath the street light. Looking up, no one would ever see me. Looking down, I could see them. And for about half an hour, I found myself rocking on this balcony at this light until I started hearing singing. And the singing coming through was angelic-like. And I knew, just by where the sound was, that it was going to come down the path. And I knew that whoever's coming down that path would have to come under that street light. So I thought, let me just see who's coming through. And it was getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And at the moment that they came under the street light, I recognized the woman. It was the local prostitute who lived in the area. And she was singing at the top of her voice. And she came through the light and carried on. And I waited until I could hear her singing no more, and I decided to jump. But I jumped back off the balcony, back into the flat, and made a decision. That if someone who is in that type of circumstance could be happy, then who was I to pity myself in the circumstance that I was in? And I made a decision to take the responsibility of my life from there on. And I realized that in order to do that effectively, I had to create a vision for my own life. I had to take responsibility for whatever was going to happen. So I committed that I would maximize my life and my time to helping other people to find their own potential and to use it to the best of their ability, regardless of any difference they had. And so I decided to create a clarified vision. And that vision for me was about making sure that whatever I believe, I can see it, I can feel it, I can taste it, I can almost smell it. Imagine something that you wanted to achieve in your life. Imagine it was a house. How many windows are in the house when you come up to the front of the door, front of the house? What colour is the front door? What colour is the carpet? What colour is the kettle in your kitchen? Wife, husband, what are they wearing when you meet them? When you embrace them, what do they smell like? Chanel or toilet water? More importantly, when it comes to setting a clarified vision, it has to have a purpose. So what's the real purpose behind the decisions that you've made in your life so far? Has anyone ever had a lesson that you didn't want to be taught? Life has a wonderful way of teaching you things when you really, really don't want to learn, but it's the very thing that you need to know. And as a young child, one of the things that my mum used to get me to do, because in fact, 12:30 on a Saturday, I'd be wiping down the doors and the skirting boards. Orange bowl, cleaning cloth, washing up liquid and water, wiping down the doors and the skirting boards, on top of the hoovering, top of the dusting. And I used to think, what? Street cred-wise, I never told my friends. Not a chance. But when I look back, what my mum was instilling in me was a sense of pride and the art of discipline. Because it wasn't about the cleaning, it was about taking pride in the little that you had. It's taking pride in the little resources that you have to give you the confidence to build upon. But also when people come around, that there's no fingerprints all over the door handles or coffee stains that make you feel embarrassed. But what it also taught me, that in life you have to set your own standards. And that's not being egotistical, and that's not being arrogant. But it is about setting a level and a standard for yourself that you refuse to drop for anybody. It's about knowing who you are, why you are, the values and the principles. And once you know that, it's working as hard as you can with that level of that standard with no apologies. It's not always easy, because sometimes life isn't in your control. I talked earlier about curveballs and Goliaths. But as long as you are clear, as long as you're very clear about what you want to achieve long term, the standard that you withheld should enable you to get there. Because in setting your own standard, you also set your own culture. You'll set your own way of being, your own environment, and therefore you attract the people who are like-minded. Does that make sense? Who's ever been in the wrong place at the wrong time? Who's ever been in the wrong place at the right time? 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, I used to work in golf. I did some diversity work for them on a 4-year contract. Now you imagine, 6 foot tall, black guy, going into golf, telling them how to be more diverse. Wasn't the easiest thing to do, just because of the nature of the sport at the time. And I like to say it's changed a lot from there on. But I remember one incident going into a golf club in the deepest part of the UK and saying, "Hi, I'm Joel Blake and I'm going to help you to become more diverse." Blank faces. At least you got smiles today. Blank faces, tie, blazer, really oppressive environment to be in. But what I realized is that I'd set my own standard, and I knew that what I wanted to do for them would add value to them by helping them to think differently about the types of people they engaged in and why. But I had to find a hook. So that hook was money. Back in the recession, memberships were going down in golf clubs. They needed to get more members in. They needed to get more money through the door. So I did all my data and statistics and research and found out in demographic information, economic information, brought that all in my little kit bag. And by the end of that meeting, I found out that 2 people had villas in Barbados. 1 was a big Bob Marley fan. 2 of them wanted my mum's jerk chicken recipe. And I got invited to a Christmas party of the other. And that was an amazing experience for me, because I could have gone in there with preconceptions of what I should do or shouldn't do. But I decided to go in there on my own terms. And whether they liked me or not, I didn't care, because I knew I had something of value. One of the biggest learning points from that experience is the art of embracing your vulnerability. So what I mean by that is this. You're over here. This is comfort zone. Very nice, safe place. You've been there, you've done that, you've learned from it. It's lovely, it's great, it feels good. You need to get over to that side of this red dot, for this example. But you're scared to take that half a step forward, and you'd rather go 10 steps back because that's more comfortable. But the liberating thing about taking that half a step is because in that middle is a sense of clarity. That's where liberation truly is. That's where you're at your best. Because you've got all these steps of knowledge in the past that you can then use to help you make the best decision about how you take that half a step forward. Does that make sense? But sometimes we get so stuck over here because we don't know what's going to happen over there, because it's the unknown, that we just rather stay or go. And the thing is, life passes you by. If you stay still, you're actually going backwards. Because as you're staying still, everybody else is coming past. So if you stay still, you actually are going backwards. So if you feel scared about taking a just remember of all the times when you've gone out there and you've done certain things in your life and you've achieved those things, whatever that may be, and you've got lessons that you can help to inform how you should be moving forward. More importantly, when you come to embrace your vulnerability and step into that clarity, you have to learn to take off that mask. And we all have masks. We all have our work mask, family mask, friends mask, community mask. We all have them. I bet some of you are even like Batman and Batwoman and got the whole outfit as well, haven't you? Be yourself. You're born and you die. What you do in the middle is the most important thing. Why try and be like anybody else? Sometimes you have to learn to accept yourself, or the quirks, or the goods, or the bads, or the warts, or one for all, and understand that the people who are attracted to you because you are being you. And so what I've learned so far in life is that success, whatever that means to you, is determined by the lessons that you learn from your disadvantages. That's really the key for me. Because once you begin to understand that, you begin to understand that there's a logic and there's an emotional combination that enables you to achieve whatever you want. See, the logic I mean in this context is the ability to take a real intense view on where you are, understand your emotional connection to that realization, and then make a better and more informed decision. But you've got to be committed to that success. You've got to be committed to that decision. Sometimes we can fall in love with the novelty of wanting to achieve whatever that is. We fall in love with the dream and forget about the here and now. We forget that we actually need to do something rather than fall in love with what you're going to do. And yes, we can't always do that by ourselves, and therefore we need good mentors, we need good people who can support us. But in my experience, you can learn just as much from a bad mentor as you can from a good. Because you can learn how not to do something, which in some cases is actually more important than learning how to do it. But it's about how you apply that learning in your life. I had a full circle moment last year where someone kindly nominated me for this Order of the British Empire Medal, which for me was amazing, because it was just for something based on just trying to be myself. So that was great in itself, and to be on a long list of people who came before me and a long list of people who are going to come after me, it was my little moment to kind of reflect and think, wow, ain't that nice? Nice things do happen sometimes in your life. But more importantly for me, it was a full circle moment for my family and for my community and for those friends and family who've done things for me in the background that no one would ever know. And for family, it was really interesting because my father, who we really didn't have the best of relationships all of our lives, but he was 100% there as a role model for me to learn from. But for him, growing up in Jamaica, in a place called Salt Lane in Kingston in Jamaica, they always used to think about England as mother country, Queen Mother. One day I've got to get to England. One day, the opportunity's there. Although the realization that when they came to England, it was cold. Very, very cold. Negatives of racism, intolerance, etc. And also tasteless mushy peas. But for him to come from such an environment, to be sitting in Buckingham Palace, it fulfilled a boyhood dream for him. And that was amazing. For my mum and all the years of struggle and all the hassle, it was amazing. But more importantly, it was the fact that anything is possible. If you be yourself, anything can happen. But the biggest thing for me with that whole experience was the importance of legacy. It's the importance of living your life with a purpose, with the realization that you may not see that purpose come to life in your lifetime. but it's knowing that you did something that made a mark in someone's life somewhere. And yes, there was the argument around the history of the British Empire and colonialism and all of these different aspects which are not to be underestimated, and it did take me a while to really consider whether I wanted to accept that award. But I realized that it wasn't actually about me. It was about everyone else who's going to come after. It was about my son, it was about children, it was about family, it was about community, it was about all the things that we sometimes forget, which are the important things, which are the things that we can plant seeds in our own existence, in our own lives, that can have an impact in so many different ways. And so every single person in this room has the opportunity to do something magical, and it doesn't have to be something big. It could be something small. It could be something really small that just sets that whole kind of butterfly effect that you won't even see the result of. But it's knowing that you did something because you were yourself that was good. And so, yes, the time is now to make better decisions in your life. The time is now for you to think about where you see yourself. The time is now for you to see and be clear about the types of impacts that you can create in the lives of other people. So I ask you, no, in fact, I challenge you. I challenge you to make a decision today that you're going to thank your future self for. I challenge you to make a decision today that maybe coming here this morning you knew you had to make but you didn't want to. What's that call, or who's on that end of the phone that you should be speaking to? Are you going to type that text that you thought about but you didn't? You're going to send that email that you really didn't want to type and you really don't know what's going to happen with it but you really need to send it? Or are you going to have that conversation with somebody else that's going to give them just what they need to make a difference in their own life? I challenge you to make a decision. So, what are you going to do? Thank you.